to start off with two things. First of all, I just want to say it's very, very dangerous to give a microphone to an Asian man. He either would do a speech or he's going to break out in a song. So that's dangerous, number one. And number two is never invite a Southwest Eastern Asian man from Vietnam, where we enjoy tropical weathers, to come to bloody Melbourne in winter. But I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for your prayers. I am extremely privileged and an honor to be here. I think sitting here, when I get invited to places like this, where I look at young Vietnamese upcomers, it's inspired me also. My objective today, if I can walk away with a tiny little message to you guys, is that, you know, typically as Asians, we always think about, we want to do good, but we just have to wait till we do our obligations to family, having kids, having houses and car, and then when you have your 5 houses and 60 years old, then you're going to do charity work. And I'm telling you that that's not the case. You can actually do it right now and be inspired. Hello? So I told you it's dangerous to give. So that's the objective for today. But the title is Attitude for Success. I think that along the way, you're going to become successful like Mao or like Janet and all that, and I think they probably agree with me with this, is that there's a saying, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. And so that's the journey. And along the journey, when Bao said, and Janet, and probably for KOTO as well, is an incredible journey of risk-taking, of a lot of perseverance, a lot of making mistakes, and then finally coming up and rise above it. And when you know you win, is when they don't laugh at you anymore, they don't ignore you anymore, they don't fight you anymore. So that's probably a good thing. But before I start, I just want to give a shout out to Sean. Thank you, Sean, and to the sponsors for today. To my friend Miss Liddy, thank you for sponsoring our kids over here. We have 10 kids from Vietnam actually doing work experience in Melbourne. Thank you, Bao, our sponsor as well. So Saudi Arabia and Singapore, and finally call Australia home at the age of 8. And pretty much like Bao, we came in Christmas of 1980, but in Sydney, not in Melbourne. My parents are separated by then. We had 6 people in the family, and like every Vietnamese woman that I know, even to this day, full of resilience. My mom is no exception. And so raising kids, doing all sorts of jobs to raise a family, and making sure that we have an education, a roof over our head, and food on the table, no matter at what cost. And that's, I think they always they live their dream through their children. So I was very lucky to be raised in the lucky country as an immigrant, even though like our previous speakers, I didn't have very much either. So I came back to Vietnam pretty much for the first time in 1996. And I want to paint a picture for anyone who, around that time, I'm not sure, but I think most of you are around 1996, right? So you probably won't remember. 1996 in Vietnam was considered a third world country. And 80% of the population pretty much was classified, was under the poverty line, living on $1 a day. And for everywhere, there's no traffic lights in those days. You can actually cross the road in those days. But there was poverty everywhere, and of course, the most obvious is street kids. So I came back in 1996 working in tourism. And I decided to go for a walk that, I call it the walk that changed my life. It was in Ho Chi Minh City in the central area, and then I met 4 street kids. They thought I was Japanese, and I said, "Konnichiwa." I said, "It's okay. I can speak Vietnamese." I didn't actually, but then we struck up a conversation, and that what leads to the next couple of weeks was in the most extraordinary time of my life. Word got around that a new sucker was in town, and this big fat turkey is going to take us to dinner every night. So the number grown from 5 to 10 to 20 to about 60 children that you take over a bowl of noodle soup, called pho, and for an extra 20 cents, you can add the Coca-Cola to that as well. And then you see the smile, even for 5 minutes, it was worth it to see that. And like the Vietnamese people all over, is that they work 16 hours a day, they make a couple of dollars that they send home to their families in the Mekong Delta, but they always seem to have this radiant smile as if they won't be defeated by their circumstances. So one particular night, we were sitting around the street vendors in the plastic chair on the, in those days I could sit on one, I can't now. But this one particular girl that to basically helped me to understand why I came back. She's a very angry little girl, very small, very petite, and she's been seeing me for a couple of days. So every time she sees me, she pulls my jacket and she goes, "Give me money." Very unhappy girl. And that particular night, she was running around where we're sitting having pho, and she said, "Mommy, Mommy, I'll try harder tomorrow," because she didn't meet the quota for the day. And that quota, and her mom right behind her, was a metal pipe that was going to be beaten with. And her alcoholic father is somewhere nearby, and her mom, of course, is somewhere always tagging along with her. So she, I found out later on, many years later, she didn't actually make it to her adulthood. But that particular night, you have 2 important decisions to make. One, you can say, that was very tragic, I'm gonna go home and send money back to Vietnam, like a lot of people has done before. Or number 2, you can be courageous and stupid and say that you're gonna be that change that you wanna see in the world. So I decided I wanna be that change. I didn't have any experience doing it. I didn't know hospitality. I didn't have any experience in development. I just have a passion. And that's the start of a wonderful relationship. So I came back to Vietnam 4 months later with a job as a tour leader. And I read 2 books on Vietnam. One particular book was called Waislitz, a typical name they use for street kids. And I had $250 in my pocket, and I have a job. The next 4 years, I traveled all across Asia, China, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and of course Vietnam. And everywhere I go, if I see street kids, I would just give them money. I would put them through English classes, and I would give an allowance. And there began an understanding. Do you guys know an old Chinese proverb will give a man a fish today and he will eat them today? Well, KOTO is very much about that proverb. So the first 3.5 years, I spent giving fish every day to those kids. And then one day in Hanoi, the 9 kids I looked after pulled me aside and said, "Do you remember when you were renting the house for us? Well, we were getting kickbacks. Do you remember you did this for us? Well, we conned you, and we tricked you, and we cheated you the last couple of years. But we're going to tell you the truth now, is that we trust you now. So if you're going to help us, we're going to need a job." And there began the idea of KOTO. I didn't know, again, after 3.5 years in Vietnam, I didn't know very much, but the one thing I do know is that I want to create a family for these kids. I didn't want it to be a typical training program. So we opened our first sandwich shop on 15th of June, 1999, and we'll be celebrating our 20th anniversary next year. So what is KOTO? KOTO, as our MC has mentioned, is a know one, teach one. And it would be the philosophy that in everything that we do today. So it's a 2-year training program live-in for kids who are disadvantaged, who are street kids, who've been trafficked, kids that are in juvenile detention centers, those in society that people call no hoper, people that actually don't have a direction. They're at the intersection of their lives. So we pick them up, we dust them off, we put them into a loving environment for 2 years. We take them on holidays and karaoke. We feed them 3 meals a day. We teach them an Australian hospitality standard, Certificate 3 in hospitality. And then we teach them English, not the one that John Ketcher trained to London at 3 o'clock, but the English that is relevant, like broccoli and tomatoes and the funny brown stuff that you spray on toast for Aussie travelers. And the last one is, we think is very important, life skills. If you picture kids that in the countryside, Phu Tha, Ha Dai, in the Mekong Delta, they don't even know where a can opener is. And you began a journey of hygiene, to family planning, to all this stuff that's so new. And the most important thing is attitude. And I'll tell you this a bit more. So what is the results of that? After 20 years of operations, we actually graduated over 1,000 kids in the program. I think on so many levels, not only we have 100% job placement success. I talked to some friends here who know our kids. So if you go to the 5-star hotels and to the international restaurants, mostly in Vietnam, where our kids are placed. On the policy making level, for 20 years, when I started this, it's a VQ right in Hanoi, opening a business, working with children in 1996. You can imagine. And then 2 months later, I have my very important friend came to visit us. His name is Bill Clinton. And so what followed was 4 years of intensive investigation. Because understandable, who are you? Why are you doing here? Why are you helping these kids? And why are you doing a program that are typically a street kid only deserve 3 months? Why are you keeping them for 2 years? What is your motive? Are you exploiting them? Are you trafficking them to China, etc.? So 4 years was intense investigation and vetting, and at the end of it, last year, KOTO became the first registered legal social enterprise in Vietnam. So this is a huge achievement. You know how they always say that the top down, this is the bottom up. And as a result of that, there's about 500 social enterprises are working in Vietnam in the area of technology, environment, startups, education, etc. In the industry, 20 years ago when we started it, people think that cooking and food, everyone can do it. It's not important. Now, it's the most hot profession. In Hanoi alone, in the next 3 years, they will build another 7 5-star hotels. There's a resort built in Vietnam literally every week. From the Ritz-Carlton coming to the Four Seasons, and every Tom, Dick, and Harry is coming as well. to Vietnam and becoming the top tourist destination. So on the community level is that we think that a social enterprise, we run a business, but pretty much like Roll, we have a very clear social mission. We are not-for-profit, and every money that we make goes into developing Vietnamese youth. That's our mission. But how we do it, we don't rely on complete funding, and we don't run as an NGO. We don't say, come and help us because it's the right thing to do. As a community, we don't want you to feel sorry for these kids. If you go to a KOTO restaurant, you will never see a pamphlet with poor kids and sad kids on the cover. Because if you're going to empower people and you're going to help people, it's an investment. It's not a charity. And in Vietnam, unfortunately, was like Australia 40, 50 years ago. It's always about, I help you because I feel sorry for you. But we can change that mentality to say, I help you because I can see the big picture of you being an active citizen that makes this world go around. And that's what we're trying to achieve in Vietnam. So the first 3.5 years was giving someone a fish and they eat them every day. The following 15 years was to show them how to fish. The next step for KOTO, the last 5 years, is have you guys heard of a very famous, it's called the Godfather of Social Enterprise, his name is Bill Drayton. Have you heard of him? No? Anyone heard of Bill Drayton? Anyway, he's like the Marlon Brando of social enterprise, without the cigar. And he says that social entrepreneurs are not content with just giving someone a fish, nor teaching them how to fish. They will not rest until they revolutionize the fishing industry. And how we do that is this. 70% of our staff at the moment are staffed by KOTO graduates. Including last year, we appointed our general manager, I call him my boss, who 20 years ago was selling postcards in front of the Australian embassy. And I'll tell you her story in a second. We opened up scholarships around in Australia where we have 3 who's doing their masters and about 20 every year doing degrees, certificate, and training. And we place 60 kids around the world from UAE, Malaysia, New Zealand, Australia, Germany. Why? Because like you guys here and sitting here and like Bao's mission as well, we want Vietnamese to occupy the top level. Because at the moment, the GMs of 5-star resorts in Vietnam, or the celebrity chefs, are all foreigner, mostly 90%. So why not a Vietnamese? Why not a local? And that's the aim. If we can somehow be the disruptor and provide an ecosystem of food supply to working to become the general manager, that using the labor of former street kids and changing the attitude. 20 years ago, when my first class graduated, and that's including our GM, and I went to a small restaurant in Church Street in Hanoi, and I knocked on the door and I said, would you hire my kids? And the general responses are, don't be silly. Don't they lie, they cheat, they steal, they're lazy, they're unreliable, etc., etc. Now, is that 3 months before graduation, they will be picked up mostly by all the 5-star hotel. Not because our training program is so spectacular, but because it's the attitude. People comment, and even Lily, who's hosting to my graduate, said the attitude is amazing. The attitude of wanting to learn, want to be better than what you were, is something comes only from within. It can't be taught. And in the hospitality, people look for that. Of course, in a nice CV as well. So we recognize in the fishing industry, so we think that there's a lot of potential for us in the future to expand this model. We think a school, fee-paying school, more hotels, more restaurants. We're doing services for PwC in Vietnam, where our alumni runs the coffee shop and the meals and things like that. There's a lot of opportunity, and we hope that when KOTO becomes sustainable, which is only about 70% at the moment, that it would inspire a lot of people. Our attitude here usually is that, what can I do? My parents asked me to go to university, get a degree, come back, get married, have children, and live out the life. And that's great. That's really fantastic. But there's nothing stopping you with this education that you have is to come back with a purpose. Is that whatever I do, business, I have to do business. Business principle. But the most important thing is my purpose is to be a service to others. If I can be a service to others, that's the greatest success, attitude to success you can have. So finally, I have two things. One is, we're going to break this up a little bit. We're going to have a video for you guys. So I'm going to put the faces to the names. But a lot of people ask me, could you tell us who's the most successful and the most successful kids, and out of 1,000 kids, that who do you think kind of sort of like stand out? The answer is very simple. Success to me is basically, if I help a kid who used to be, a terrible word in Vietnam, it's called OSIM, was a maid who sleeps on a kitchen floor and never get to see a mausoleum, now can take her kid to see the mausoleum, that's success. Or a street kid who shines shoes and now have a coffee shop of his own with his wife and his kid, that's success. Or someone who's did a master's at RMIT and run the whole KOTO organization, that's success also. Or a girl who used to sell soy, which Lily knows very well.
She was the original speaker here as well.
And she was the original speaker here, who became, and now in London, receiving awards and all that, and being the ambassador and all that, that's success. It's amazing when you empower people, and especially it's within our Vietnamese DNA, guys. Seriously, we are so entrepreneurial. We have 1,000 years of occupation from the Chinese. We must have to learn some bloody thing. Entrepreneur, very business, and we have like 90 years of French, which is arrogant and creativity, right? And then now we are our own people, and Australia, added to that is that we're loud and we care. Add them all together, we can do incredible things. So enjoy the video.